When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Trooper. User, Roger104. Posted, December 17th, 2000.
The first time I saw him, he was barefoot, walking the shoulder just past exit 13 like the cold wasn't eating him alive. It was after 2 a.m, mid-October, and the fog had settled thick over the pavement. I remember my headlights catching him in pieces. Feet, legs, that thin white t-shirt hanging loose against his ribs. He moved like he had nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. Not a hitchhiker, not drunk, just walking and smiling. I pulled over and threw on the flashers. When I stepped out of the cruiser, a 91 Crown Vic beat to hell but still running, he turned his head like he'd been expecting me, like he knew exactly what I was doing before I did it. "Evening," I said, trying not to startle him. "You all right?" No answer. Just that same small, contented smile. He didn't look strung out. His eyes weren't darting around. No tremors, no wounds. His feet, bare and pale against the asphalt, weren't even dirty. Not scratched, not torn up from gravel or glass, just clean. Too clean. I asked his name, and nothing. I told him it was dangerous to be walking the interstate at night. He nodded like he agreed, then just kept staring. So I did what I was trained to do. Cuffed him gently. No resistance. Patted him down. No wallet, no ID, no keys, no pager, no loose change. Nothing but a quiet presence and the scent of pine and warm dust. He got into the back seat without a word. We rode in silence all the way to the station, static buzzing low from the police radio and a half-played Tom Petty cassette rattling in the dash. I filled out the intake sheet by hand and logged him in the incident log as a John Doe. Holding room 2 was open, so I walked him in and locked the door behind him. Heavy latch, key-only deadbolt. I double-checked it before I walked back to the bullpen. 15 minutes later, I came back with the file in hand, and the room was empty. Door still locked, cuffs on the floor. Gone. No broken glass, no alarms. I checked the security tape and old black and white feed on a reel-to-reel recorder, and it cut out for 15 seconds, or right around 2:53 a.m. When it came back on, the cell was empty. My supervisor said I must have misfiled something. Maybe the guy slipped past me while I was distracted, but that didn't happen. I know what I saw. 2 weeks later, he was back. Same place, same time, same man. I saw the glow of his white shirt through the fog, and my stomach dropped. I pulled over, and he looked at me, smiled, and I swear it was the exact same smile. This time, I didn't take chances. I never took my eyes off him, walked him through the station myself, sat on the bench outside the holding room with a cup of vending machine coffee in my hand and a pocket-sized notebook in my lap. I even wrote the time down every 15 minutes just to keep myself grounded, and still, when I opened that door an hour later, he was gone. It has been 9 times now. Always the same stretch of highway, always past exit 13. Always barefoot, always silent, always smiling, and every time I bring him in, and every time he disappears before dawn. I don't tell anyone anymore. I stopped after the 3rd time, started tweaking the paperwork, writing him up as an unresolved welfare contact or possible mistaken ID. Just enough to bury it under a stack of traffic stops and vagrancy calls, because deep down, I didn't want it to stop. I don't really know why, well, I do. I just hate saying it out loud. You see, my younger brother, Nate, he died last spring, 26 years old, overdosed in a motel outside Clay County. Some new stuff that just started to hit around here, and cops didn't know what to look for yet. Neither did I, honestly. I was actually the one who found him, room 6, upstairs, key still in the door. I'll never forget the color of his lips. Blue, just barely, the kind of blue you'd miss if the light wasn't right. He looked peaceful, weirdly enough, curled up like he was just asleep, but there was blood dried on his upper lip and vomit down his shirt. I missed a call from him that night. I was lifting weights in the garage, headphones in. One missed call on the machine. He didn't leave a message. I played it back twice, hoping for background noise or a breath or something, and there was nothing but the click of the line cutting off. By the time I tried him back, it was too late. That's what I carry around. Not the funeral, not even the memory of that motel room. It's that call I didn't take. So when I see this man, this stranger who shouldn't exist, who walks the highway barefoot and disappears like smoke, I see Nate. Not in his face, not in his body, but in the quiet, in the weight, in the helplessness. And yeah, maybe I've got a soft spot for the ones who look like they're stuck. Maybe I think that if I can just help this one stranger, this blank slate, it might mean something. Like maybe I could do for him what I couldn't do for Nate. Hell, the 6th time I saw him, I even asked him outright, "Are you Nate?" I don't know why I said it. It just came out heavy and cracked, like it had been waiting inside me since April. The man didn't say anything, but he stepped forward and put his hand flat on my chest. His palm was warm, solid, and for a second, everything in me shut off. No grief, no guilt, no tightness in my throat, just a pause, like someone hit the mute button on the whole world. Then he stepped back, walked to the cruiser, and got in like he always did. Of course, I'd find the cell empty again later that night, cuffs on the floor folded like someone set them down gently. That night, I drove out to Nate's grave. Didn't say anything, didn't pray. Just sat in my uniform with my thermos and the keys still in the ignition. I still dream about that stretch of road, and in the dream, exit 13 glows brighter than the others. Sometimes there's fog, sometimes there isn't. The man's always there, though, walking, barefoot and smiling. And lately, more and more, Nate's walking behind him. I don't know what this is. I don't know who he is, but I'll keep pulling over, keep trying to help, keep logging him in on carbon copy forms and locking the door myself, keep waiting to see how he disappears this time, because maybe trying, even when it never makes a difference, is better than doing nothing. Maybe it's the closest I'll ever come to fixing the past. And maybe one night when I pull over, the man will finally speak. Maybe he'll tell me what I need to hear. Maybe it'll be Nate's voice.
Subject, Mindy. User, JDuCA78. Posted February 10th, 1996.
Our neighbor Mindy was a student at Cal State. She was a sweet, kind, tall girl with blonde hair and the bluest eyes. It was her eyes that caught me. I was young then, but not so young I didn't have an interest in girls, and you'd think Mindy might have been the object of my affection, but even at that age, I could see such sadness in her eyes. It wasn't until they found her dead and we began to learn the circumstances of her life that I understood where it had come from. It started with a letter. My mom and I lived alone on the third floor of Ming Tree Apartments near the corner of Ming Avenue and New Stein Road. We had lived there ever since my dad passed. He was the head of one of Bakersfield's 24 Fortune 500 companies before he had a heart attack, and it was revealed that our entire life was an illusion built on debt. Within 3 months of his burial, we found ourselves downgraded from a 4-bedroom house on acreage to our present 2-bedroom apartment. It was good though, and aside from having a lot of room to run around, I wasn't a spoiled kid, so the transition wasn't as hard as you might think. Mom did not adjust as well, so I tried to make her feel better by helping out around the house, and one of the little jobs I did for her was opening the mail to make it easier for her to go through. The letter was a thank you from a psychic hotline kind of deal, and it was addressed to Mindy, mistakenly delivered to us, but I didn't catch that until after it was open. Like I said, I didn't really have the hots for her, but that sadness I could see in her eyes and the high number of male friends she seemed to have over, never other girls, always boys, it made me curious, so I read it. It thanked her for calling and said that her life would soon improve for the better. I showed the letter to my mom and asked her what it meant, but she just shook her head. She said that we shouldn't bring it right to Mindy, as she might be embarrassed that we opened it. Instead, she suggested I put it back in the envelope and slip it under her door after she left for school. That night, I woke up to the sound of my mother screaming. I was terrified, but even so, I jumped out of bed and ran down the hallway towards her room. Looking back now, I don't know what, at that age, I could have done if there was an intruder in the house, but still, when you're a kid, you don't think these things through. Well, my mom's door was open, and inside I could see that her bedside lamp was on. I asked her if she was okay, and she told me that she'd had a nightmare. It was obvious that she was shaken, so I asked her what her dream had been about. Usually she wouldn't talk about this stuff with me, but the dream had scared her so bad, she told me right away. She dreamed that she had been tied down, her mouth covered, while someone injected her with something. I wanted to talk about it more, but she was quickly calming down, and I could tell she regretted having told me at all. Instead, she hugged me and just told me to go back to bed. 2 days later, an ambulance and police car pulled up in the small parking lot across from our apartment. Uniformed men swarmed out of the vehicles and up the stairs. I can remember the sound of their feet thundering along the corridor, past our door and right up to Mindy's. Mom quietly lifted one of the blinds on the lobby side window and peeked out at what was happening. A moment later, I heard a voice, one of the policemen, Mom said, calling Mindy's name. When she didn't answer, there was a loud smashing sound. Mom said they had broken down her door, followed by muffled voices. Soon more police came, and eventually one of them, a broad man in a suit, came to our door to talk to us. He explained he was a police detective and wanted to know about Mindy. I said she looked sad, and the officer didn't reply, but he looked at my mother, who asked me to go to my room while she and the policeman talked. Curious as to what they were saying, I left my door open, but they were speaking in lowered tones and I couldn't hear much of the conversation. What I did hear was the word escort, which didn't make any sense to me back then, and overdose, which I kind of understood. After the officer left, I waited a few minutes, then left my room. Mom was flopped down at the kitchen table, a look of shock on her face not unlike the one she had the night of her dream. I asked her what had happened, and she said that Mindy was dead. The officer said she'd used drugs and had mistakenly taken too much. I asked her if it was like her dream, and she looked at me pretty sharply, then told me not to say things like that. I was going to ask her what an escort was, but the look on her face told me I was pretty close to the edge as it was. So I decided to look it up in the dictionary at the school the next day. Of course, you know and I know that Mindy was keeping company with men for money, and I imagine using the drugs to take the edge off. I guess that might go some way towards explaining why she was so sad. Strange things started happening in our building after that. The door to my room would sometimes open on its own, even when it had firmly been closed. The kitchen lights started flickering as well, no matter how many bulbs Mom switched out or how many times Mr. Swenson, the super, tried to fix the socket. Mom kept having the dream too. For weeks afterward, she'd wake up in the night, not always screaming, but always loud enough I could hear. There were nights where I would wake up myself, not from a nightmare, but from a certainty that someone had just been standing next to my bed. Every time it happened, I'd ask my mom the next morning if she had been in to check on me. After the second or third incident, she started saying she had been, but I could tell she was just saying that to end the conversation. The police spent more than a week in and around our building, talking to residents and people who would regularly come there, repairmen, guests, and so on. Eventually they stopped, and so too did the dreams. Strangest of all was that once the dream stopped, so too did the opening of my door and the flickering of lights. I've always wondered if it was Mindy, unable or unwilling to move on.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.